Welcome back to the Humble Market Timer YouTube channel. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. In today's video, I want to look at the Bitcoin to gold ratio. Can the Bitcoin to gold ratio chart determine when Bitcoin will bottom and when gold will top? Before I go any further, please check the description for my disclaimer. Once again, these are my sole ideas, not investment advice. Now, as we all know, Bitcoin has been on a slide and gold has been skyrocketing. And there has been some question as to whether or not one has to do with the other. And so what I have here is a chart of Bitcoin versus gold. It also has the NASDAQ, but for the sake of this particular video, ignore what this blue line represents, the NASDAQ. But as you can see here, we have the gold price increasing, and at the same time, we have the Bitcoin price decreasing. And so based on this chart, it looks like there's a direct effect in gold with Bitcoin. And it's almost as if, and many people have speculated this, but no one can really prove it, but it looks as if liquidity is being sucked out of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and is getting moved into gold and other precious metals. There's an old famous saying that says there's a bull market somewhere. And so because of that, people aren't going to leave their money in where they think it's going to be dead money. And Bitcoin has had a nice run. It's sort of been in a sort of a mode where many people think it has peaked. And oftentimes, for the course of maybe a year after it peaks, it tends to underperform. And so people are not just going to have their money sitting in an area or in equity or commodity or security and just have it as dead money. They're going to move that money out and put it into something that is increasing in price. And so many believe, and I'm of the belief myself, that a lot of liquidity and money is being taken out of Bitcoin, and at this point in time, it's getting pushed into gold and other precious metals. Now, in other videos, I've talked about how you have to have the gold and silver ratio, and how I said that the gold and silver ratio, I believe it will determine when silver tops. And generally, and again, if you look back at my old videos, I pointed out that when in the gold and silver ratio, when you have these deep drops and bottoms in that ratio, at the bottom is where silver tops. And as you can see here, we have been on a major slide on the gold and silver ratio. We're currently at about 64. I drew this line here to represent what I thought is a very critical line in the gold and silver ratio, where it acts as resistance here, and it has acted as support all the ways going back to really 2015, 2014. It's acted as support along this neckline for quite a long time. And as you can see through the acceleration of the downward move of the gold and silver ratio, we are starting to approach this line, and it has been of my belief that once we get to this line, that will be a short-term top for silver, and that number happens to be in that 58, 59 range. Go back and look at some of my previous videos. I'll have maybe some of them in the description if you want more details on the gold and silver ratio, but that has been my belief with once we hit this line, that will represent a temporary top in silver. Now, looking at the Bitcoin versus gold or Bitcoin to gold ratio, I think there is a similar story being told in the Bitcoin to gold ratio as in the gold to silver ratio. When you see the Bitcoin to gold ratio dropping, that means Bitcoin is decreasing in price and gold is increasing in price. And so let's look and draw some lines and some parallels to see if we can get a feel for how this drop will continue to go. Before I do that, though, I want you to pay attention to the symmetry that we have so far in the Bitcoin to gold ratio. I talk a lot about symmetry on my channel. You can see how similar this move has been over here compared to the move over here. You see it quite often in charts. You see it once again in looking at Bitcoin versus gold. But let's draw some parallels first. Let's sort of draw one from here to about here, and we'll tweak it as we need to. But let's kind of move it here a little bit, and we're going to draw this line up here. Maybe move that down here. Slide this up here. Move this down a little bit more. And slide this up. But as you're seeing here, if I can kind of get this right here, I think this is probably a good parallel. And I wanted to kind of tweak the parallel a little bit because, again, you always want to have it hit those midpoints. You can see here we have nice midpoints being hit here that acted as support and resistance. We see we have top here, top here, top here, bottom here, bottom here, bottom here. And look how we have broken out of the parallel, and look how the action is starting to accelerate down. Now, oftentimes we want to see where that acceleration down ends. We expand the parallel so that the midpoint becomes the new lower boundary of the parallel. So if we move this down and kind of stretch it down to there, and we expand this where you have, slide this over a little bit, tweak it a hair, move this down just a little bit. And so what we've done is we have extended the parallel down to here so we can get a feel for how low this current Bitcoin to gold ratio can go before we hit a bottom in Bitcoin and potentially a top in gold. And as you can see here, if you kind of worked your way down to this lower portion of the parallel, it's showing Bitcoin to gold ratio reaching about 15. So it is of my belief that once we hit about 15 on the Bitcoin to gold ratio, that will represent a temporary top in gold and also a temporary bottom in Bitcoin. Now, when you have that sort of dropping of the Bitcoin to gold ratio, either that means Bitcoin stays the same and gold goes up, or Bitcoin goes up. Gold goes up and Bitcoin continues to come down. So those are the scenarios that you have to pay attention to, and based on that, it won't necessarily tell you what price it would occur, but I believe when it hits the bottom of this parallel, that will represent potentially the bottom of Bitcoin and potentially the top of gold, at least in the short term. So be on the lookout for this Bitcoin to gold ratio. Not a lot of people talk about it, but I do believe that it does have some credence, and it will be a key chart to monitor in looking to see when gold will top and when Bitcoin will bottom. Hope you like the content. If you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.